This last question looks at a very peculiar area that hasn't been discussed, I think. It's sent in by Chief A.A. Babarinde, Estate Surveyor and Valuer, and he asks, in respect of agriculture, apart from availability of land and easy access to cheap capital, should the government not be advised to look into improvement of rural roads and electricity?
That's already been dealt with. I see, I don't know where His Excellency is getting money from, but I see roads everywhere. And that's wonderful. But yes, rural roads, sure, because the trucks have to move quickly. As it is today, it's the transporters who are making more money than the farmers, because many of these farm roads are simply not accessible. But from what his speech and some of the things going on, that's something that has to be done. Electricity is still a problem. I must say that it appears some improvement is showing up here and there, and that maybe in another year or two, maybe the electricity situation here will stabilize. But until then, running a generator to do anything is certainly like setting iron on fire. You can't make it. But I think governments are aware of this.
All right.
And I believe they're working hard towards it.
Well, thank you very much. But before I let go of this panel, let me kind of try and summarize some of what I consider are the takeaways. I think it's pretty clear that the whole notion of the prospects in Ogun State, nobody is challenging, be it in agriculture or indeed in terms of urban development. But I think what's also come through from the conversation and the comments of panel members would require state governments, policymakers to have a very clear understanding of direction. Where exactly are we going? What exactly are we trying to achieve, and in what kind of time frame? It would also require investments, a very clear understanding of value chains in agriculture and also in the whole urban development area. It would also require a very clear sense of where markets are. So if we're producing, who are we, into which markets are we trying to head? I think the comments from the World Bank about not just Lagos as we typically see it, but West Africa is a very instructive comment that we should not ignore. I think the points also be made, especially with regard to agriculture, about the need for public-private partnership, but also for government to treat certain kinds of investments essentially as public goods. Investing in mechanization, investing in earth dams that enable greater levels of crop rotation, but also the motivation of younger people. If our farmers have an average age of 65, then it simply tells us that food security becomes a problem going forward. And I think the points also be made, especially with regard to urban development, about the need for transparent, simple, well-publicized processes that are time-bound, such that they reduce the cost of regulation and therefore make things more affordable. I think in terms of finance, the point's been very articulately made about the need for specialist institutions that are geared towards the work in these two particular areas. That depending on commercial banks who essentially take 90-day money in trying to finance 10-year and longer funding is simply an exercise that won't happen. But I think the final point to also summarize all of them is that at the public level, there is a need for greater efficiency, better management of resources if we are to achieve some of these things. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on your behalf, I thank the members of this panel, starting from my extreme right, the Honorable Commissioner for Finance, Mrs. Kemi Abeokuta. I extend your thanks to Mr. Dipo Onobanjo for his comments. I thank for her perspective Ms. Marie-Francois Maria Nelly from the World Bank. I also extend our gratitude to Chief Audu Ogbe, the chairman of Efigo Farms. And last but certainly not least, I thank Mr. Segun Agbaje, the Managing Director of GT Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being your moderator.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dipo Salami. Wonderful session. But please don't go too far yet. We need you for photographs here, and we have some presentations. Can we just have these wonderful people line up for a lovely photograph sessions? Pressmen, are you ready? Thank you very much. Slightly forward. We also have some presentations.
Second Ogun Investment Forum is coming to you live from Abeokuta, venue of that summit. Well, earlier on, the governor of the state, Governor Ibikunle Amosun, did say that he wanted Ogun to be what New York is to New Jersey, and not just to Lagos, but to the entire country. But there are certain factors that need to be considered when all of these things are done. You talked about infrastructure, the power, the road infrastructure, and all of those areas have got to be properly developed if indeed agriculture and urban development, as is the theme for this year's investment, is to see fruition.
Well, that's very true, Chamberlain. You also have to remember he talked about land. Now, I had a conversation earlier with the Commissioner for Commerce and Industry, Mr. Abimbola Ashiru, and he mentioned that to get a CFO in Abeokuta in Ogun State right now takes you just 2 months. When we know on an average, in some states, for instance, let's take the commercial city, Lagos, it takes you about 6 months to get a CFO. And so they're trying as much as possible to make it easier for people to come into the state and invest. And it's very good because at this particular point in time, Ogun State is actually looked at as the industrial hub of the nation. And so what they're trying to do today is to look at how Ogun State can actually become an industrial hub, not just for neighboring Lagos State, commercial city, but indeed West Africa. And they talked about a lot of some other risks, that which isn't just totally only what Ogun State faces. It's something every other person faces, talking about access to credit, especially for the agriculture sector, because we have a lot of subsistence farmers. And so they're talking about how we can mechanize farming in Ogun State, because that is one of the best ways to, to feed